Hi, welcome to an Income Trader stock market training on our video series here, Financial Skills for Teens. And today we're talking about managing your money. Now, if you're sitting there right off the bat and you're thinking, I don't have any money, it's going to be pretty easy to manage. We'll talk about getting part of that money too, and then when it's going to come in and what to do when you finally go back and get that. So before I do get started, I want to make sure that we understand this is an educational series, and occasionally we'll talk about some type of a financial asset, and this is just for educational purposes only. We're not saying go out and buy that stock or that ETF or that financial security. At this point, we're just doing some education only. Course topics today, what we're going to cover. Number one, we're going to talk about why do I need to manage my money, where you might be spending your money, a big one here, which is wants versus needs, and creating a budget. So stick with me as we kind of go through this. We'll try to make it as exciting as possible, even though it is all about creating budgets and managing money. And not a lot of people like to think about that or talk about that, but we'll try to make it as interesting as possible as we go through this. Number two, we're going to talk about understanding your first paycheck. And if you've already got your first paycheck, you might already be thinking, what happened to all my money on my paycheck? We'll cover the importance of saving and the 3 stages of financial wellness, which is our ultimate goal, is to first bring in some money, manage that money, budget the money, how much we're going to do with it, how we're going to save or invest that money, and then the 3 stages of financial wellness, which is where we'd like to end up by the time we get a little bit older in life. Maybe not by the time you're 15, 16 years old. Number one, why do we need to know that, or why do we need to know this? And a lot of people like to think, is it really important I learn this at a very early age? I just barely have enough money. I'm only doing some babysitting, or I'm mowing some yards, or I just got my first job. Do I even need to know this? And the answer is, if you don't learn it now, how to manage your money, you're soon going to be out of money and you'll be living paycheck to paycheck. And while that might be okay while you're still living in your parents' home and they're paying your bills, what we set off early off in life is usually going to carry through with us later on. So the sooner we learn this, the better off we're going to be, because we also want to ensure that we have money to meet our daily needs as we go through life. One, you might be thinking, I think I'd like to be able to save for college, education, cars, vacations. Maybe that's one of the reasons we have to start to learn to budget. Now, you might not think that that has to do with you, because maybe you're lucky enough and your parents are going to pay for that. But at some point, you're not going to be in your parents' home anymore. And if you don't have that, then we got to make sure that we have the right systems in place. And I also like to make sure I have the freedom to pursue my dreams later on in life. And I don't have to worry about when I'm 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, can I barely pay my bills? Gaining some insight. Here's a nice David Bach, the author. Before you can really start setting financial goals, you need to determine where you stand financially. And that's a good lesson in life here, not just for finances, because we can take out the actual words here where it says financial and financially and apply it to everything in life. Before you can really start setting goals, you need to determine where you stand in everything you want to do. Before I can decide if I want to stand for this, I have to figure out where do I actually stand in everything going forward. So it's a nice quote, works financially. And it also works for everything outside of life. It's not talking about just money, but these same principles, we already kind of understand a little bit about them, but we don't always put them into place when it comes to finances, because nobody really talks to us about finance. You might go to school, you might have a job, you might go to church, whatever you do, but generally most people don't actually talk to you about what to do with the money when you have it. And so that's kind of what we're trying to do here. What do we do with that money when we have it? Let's talk about maybe a little bit with followers. You know, maybe you want to be a social media sensation, an influencer, and have lots of followers so that you can actually make some money from that. So we're talking about managing just about anything in life. Here in this video series is about money, but this is the same principle. If you want to have lots of followers on any of these different services, or maybe you find a new one that's popping up, at random here, you've got to kind of budget how you get those. Do you just say that, you know what, I think I'd like to go ahead and I'd like to have 1 million followers on YouTube or Insta or Twitter or TikTok, whatever you have. So that the goal then would be is once I have those followers, I can then have other people pay me to talk about videos for them or to recommend products. And that's how I'm going to go ahead and make my living. But how do you get those? And that's all about setting budgets, managing. Do you go out and say, I'm going to go out and get myself a $100,000 studio that I can put up a nice camera. I can have a camera operator. I can have somebody who does all of the optics. I can have someone who does the lighting. I can have somebody who will then go back and edit the videos and then upload the videos. And then I can have somebody else who works in my sales department to contact other YouTube sensations or other people on Twitter and say, hey, would you allow me to do this, or would you want to do this? And the goal then being is, can I have that where I can create the right type of videos to get the new followers, and do I have the money to do that? You just can't go out and say, I'm going to spend that money and do that if you don't have the money to do it. Or two, if you spend $100,000 to do that and your first 10 videos only get you 15 or 20 people, you're not going to make any money off that. And it comes back to, am I managing and budgeting my money correctly? So I'll talk about this. If I'm Tom Brady, a football player, and I want to be the greatest of all time in football, did he have to manage his time as well? Did he say, okay, I've got so much time for school, but after school, I'm going to go back and I have to throw this many passes, I have to do this many drills, I have to do this many practices? And does he continue to practice even after the season's over? And does he continue? And one of the things he's doing is he makes sure he eats right so he has a healthy body so he can actually live longer and play longer. Serena Williams, how much time did she spend practicing day in and day out with her dad and her sister in order to get to where she wants to go? Managing is in everything that we do. And if I want to get to anything financially, I have to learn how to manage financially as well. So this isn't just about money. It's about everything else in life we do. We're just transferring it over to the money aspect to kind of go back and see how that works for us. So here we are. Where do I spend my money? So the first thing I'm going to have to do is to learn how to budget. And we can make this as easy as we want, but I want to write down, where do I spend my money? Write down every dollar you receive. And you can make this easy. Try not to make it too difficult. Just put a simple note piece of paper out there. And on one half of your notepad, just go down and say, here's all the money that came in, and here's all the money that came out. Write down every dollar you receive and every dollar you spend. And this now becomes what's called an income and expense statement. Money coming in and expenses, money going out. And then start to categorize your expenses. So in other words, how much money am I spending on just entertainment? How much on food? How much on clothes? How much on shopping? How much on a car or a bicycle, or want to go on dates, whatever it might be? Start to kind of categorize that and see where your money's going and see if there's any ways we can start to change that. So you're going to hear the terms income and expenses. Income simply means money that's coming in, money you receive, money that's paid to you. Now, you can include gifts on this, but generally most people won't write down the gifts because that's just an extra bonus that's not going to be there on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And then expenses is just simply money that's going out. Just money that you pay for things, goods and services. So if you did go to McDonald's after school, that would be an expense. If you did buy an app on your phone, that would be an expense. Money that you're actually paying for things that leaves your account. And then go ahead and write down every dollar. Write down every dollar you receive and spend. Track it for 2 weeks to a month based on how often you get paid. Do you babysit every day? Do you have a job that gets paid once a week or every 2 weeks? Just kind of write down everything you have coming in for 2 weeks to a month. Keep it simple. You can put it in a notebook. There's all kinds of free apps on the internet that kind of help you with this, but they can get kind of complicated. And what I find is if it's too complicated, you just won't do it. So just go ahead and bypass that. Keep it really simple. A simple notepad and paper works really well. Now, once you've got all that kind of written down, money coming in, money going out, start to kind of categorize the expenses. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to change them from needs versus wants. For instance, you might have some needs. I need to pay my cell phone bill because my parents won't pay for it. Or I need to put gas in the car in order to travel to and from work every day. Versus wants, I'd like to go to Chipotle's tonight for dinner because I'm hungry and I don't want to eat what mom cooked for dinner tonight. And I know it's kind of stereotypical, but needs versus wants. How many things do I want? I want that new app for my phone. I want this new pair of shoes, whatever it might be. One's a want, one's a need. And just kind of write them down and say, how much am I spending on my needs versus how much do I spend on my wants? And when I have that, especially the want side, I can then start to go back and find out where my money is really going to, and can I start to live within my budget, and do I need to make any changes? Now, on some of your needs, these are things you're going to write down, things you might want to need to survive. Maybe you've already moved out of the house and you need shelter. You need to pay for your apartment, or you need to buy some new clothes, or you need to be able to eat every day. So these are things that are needs. If these are currently being paid for by your parents, it allows you a lot more money to kind of put on your wants right now. The problem with this is that we start thinking that I have all this money from my wants. So when you finally move out of your house, you have all of these needs now that need to be paid. You have to start paying for your own cell phone, your electricity, your rent, your food, your plumbing in order to have water to and from. You have to start paying for all that, and we never really budgeted that before. And that's why it's kind of important to do this now before we have to start doing some of that. And then versus wants, things that make life more fun: a new phone, movie tickets, eating out with friends. Nice quote from Thomas Jefferson here. It says, never spend your money before you have it. And that's a good life lesson for almost everything that you do, even if you're just doing it for anything else out. As an example, maybe never start spending your money before it came in. You've heard that out there as well. Never count your chickens before the egg is hatched. Never tell your parents you got an A before you took a test. Never start spending money you don't have before you picked up a job. So just never spend money before you have it. It's a good life lesson for all kinds of things that we do out there. But this will become really important later on in life. And right now it might not seem quite as important because a lot of times all of your needs, financial needs, are met by your parents. And so we don't put good money management principles in place so that when we move out and we have to start growing and paying for everything, that we have that money to do it. So what do we do with money we received? So we've got our expenses. We start writing down how much money we receive, and then we're going to categorize that to wants versus needs. Generally, you want to start to categorize that in three separate areas: save, give, spend. You got three little piggy banks on here that kind of cover that. And what that means is I want to start saying, if I've got money coming in, if I can budget properly for this, I'll have money going on later in life. If you need to study for a test, how much time can I budget? I know I have X amount of time because I want to get an A on the test. Well, how much time do I study? When do I study for? Am I a procrastinator? And by the way, you'll find out if you are a procrastinator. If you don't start doing some of these things financially early, you're going to try to start saving for retirement about the time you're 63 or 64. And although that might be generations away from your thought process right now, everything in life goes with that. How we do anything is how we do everything. It's a great principle for us. So once we receive money, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whenever you get paid for whatever type of job, even if it's your allowance, we typically want to go and put that money in three different areas. It's called a save, give, spend plan. And all financial planners are going to talk a little bit about this in life, especially when you get a little bit older. But your first priority is always to pay yourself first. In other words, when that first paycheck comes in, it doesn't mean just pay yourself, take that money and go out and spend it. Woohoo, go out and spend it, just blow the money on whatever you want. It means pay yourself so that you have money set aside for later on. Set aside part of your income into a savings account or an investment account. Start early to use what's called the benefit from time value of money. And I'm going to show you how powerful that is here in just a few seconds. And you'll be amazed at what just a few little things that you do will have a great impact later on. So it's called saving, which is paying yourself first. I also like to call saving investing at the same time, because whether you save it and you put it into a savings account or something else, which we'll talk about, or an investment account, you're taking that money, you're saving it for a later date, a future date going forward where you can use that money. So save, and then we have what's called give. This is giving a portion of your income, donate it, tithe it, offer it. In other words, give away some of that money that you receive. And I know you're saying, well, I don't get very much. Well, you don't have to. If you only received $100 and you gave away $10 of it, would that really make a big difference overall? No, it would probably just take away from some of the wants that you need. Instead of going to Chipotle one afternoon, you decide not to go to Chipotle and maybe give somebody else some food that you found that was homeless or needed something, or gave it to somebody else, or helped somebody else, or helped somebody that didn't have it, and you paid for them for a lunch maybe at one time. And we get the satisfaction of helping those in need by giving. We're not just actually just giving away our money. We're doing two things. We're learning a good money management principle, and then we get the satisfaction of helping other people. And because at some point, we all need some help. And so we can help somebody through that. It gives us a little bit of satisfaction. And it gives a positive impact for the others and their self, and there's some personal growth and fulfillment. So by you helping other people, we start to grow as a person. And but that person who gets helped starts thinking, okay, I'm now back out into society. I can go out and do some of the things I couldn't do before because I didn't have a pair of shoes, or I didn't have a place to sleep, or I didn't have clean clothes type of a thing. So now maybe they get a chance to go back out in society and improve their life, and then in turn help other people. So we all start to pay it forward just a little bit. And then the third one here is to spend some of your money. So we're going to save a little bit, we're going to give a little bit away, and then the rest of it's just for us. Do what we want, and we're going to spend that. And from that, we can take care of our needs. So that's the needs and wants section. You can pay your rent. You can also take care of your wants. But I got a little grumpy cat on here, because here's where we tell people you can't just go out and pay and just spend all of your money, every piece that you have, because you want to. And so people get a little bit irritated when you say you can't spend everything. You got to hold back just a little bit. You got to still work with that savings and your giving part of it out here, but take care of your wants only enough so you're happy, but not so much that you go into debt. You don't want to go into so far debt that you become grumpy and every paycheck just goes to pay off the debt. You don't want to get your first credit card and say, okay, woo, I got my first credit card. It's a $500 or $1,000 limit on here, so I'm going to spend $1,000 on the first day. Well, then you're going to start paying off that credit card plus the interest at 23 or 25% a year, which means you're paying 25% more than what you were really supposed to go back and pay on that, just because you wanted to go into debt. And so now all your future paychecks are going into debt. So don't get so much out there. You spend so much money that you go into debt and you become a grumpy person. But just enough so that you're still happy and you have money left over to do with whatever you want. So here's kind of how we like to break it down versus your save, your give, and your spend. For the save portion, this is your first priority. This is where you're paying yourself first. You should pay yourself by setting aside part of your income into a savings account or a traditional retirement account savings or an investment account, which we actually prefer. And this will be called, at your age, if you're under 18, it'll be called a custodial account. If you're over 18, it could be a personal account that you open up at some type of a brokerage firm like a Fidelity or an E-Trade or a Charles Schwab or TD Ameritrade or any of the other brokerage firms that are out there. We open a brokerage account. And to open them up, they're free. It doesn't cost you any money whatsoever. And then you can start putting in some of your money into the brokerage account. And whatever you put in there is just acts like a typical savings account. So instead of actually going to a bank and opening up a typical savings account at a bank, if you put that same money into just your brokerage account, there are no fees. And it doesn't cost you anything to put the money into there or open it up. But typically you'll make about twice as much interest in a brokerage account as you will in a savings account. So that's kind of one that you kind of go back and do that. And then if you find a good investment sometime later on, the money's already there and waiting for you ready to go back and invest. Start early to benefit from what's called the time value of money. And I'm going to show you how that works. And we should typically be putting anywhere from 10 to 20% of your paycheck. So if you got a $100 paycheck, $10 to $20 of that should go into some type of a savings or an investment account for longer term. Giving, many successful people in many religions talk of giving a portion of your income as a selfless act that can have a positive effect on the giver, you, and in turn helps those in need, which can help achieve greater personal satisfaction and growth. About 10% of maybe your money is given away to help other people. That's part of your give, and then your spend. Once you put your money away, and the very first thing you did, and this should be in order, you should always put 10 to 20% away right off the bat. Because if you just say, I'm going to put that 10 to 20% away later on, typically, you'll just never do it. And again, many people are procrastinators, so we'll get to it later on. Well, later on is always later on. So I'll do it tomorrow. You know what tomorrow is? Tomorrow becomes today. So today you're thinking, I said I was going to do it tomorrow. So it always just gets pushed back. So first thing you do is you take that money out of that savings or put that money into savings, give, and then spend. And then here's where you put your money away for yourself. You've helped others. Now the remaining funds go just to take care of your needs and your wants. That should be 60 to 70% of your paycheck. And if you can't live within that 60 to 70% of your paycheck, then you've got too many needs and wants. And that's where we have to start to learn how to budget and say, what exactly do I need? Do I actually need to go to Starbucks every single day to get a $12 cup of coffee? And the answer is probably no. So that is not a need, it's a want. And now that it's a want, how can I start to cut back on some of those wants to do it? Well, maybe I go to the grocery store and I buy some Starbucks K-Cups when I can make a Starbucks coffee for 50 cents versus $12. And I'm not saying that's what you need to do. That's just an example of how we can kind of cut back some of our wants to make sure that we stick within that 60 to 70% rule over here. Some people say, why do I want to give away my money? This is my money. I worked hard for it. Me, I. Isn't it all about me? Who cares about the rest of the world type of stuff? Because I'm the one that's most important in everything. So why do I want to give away some of that money? Well, donating is a major mood booster. Research has identified a link between making a donation to charity and increased activity in the area of the brain that registers pleasure, proving that it has age-old adage, it really is far better to give than to receive. I mean, think about any of your people that if you listen to music, if you like to watch sports, although they might not talk about it, many of those people are actually giving a lot of their money and time and energy into charities to help other people for that same reason. It helps other people and it helps them to feel better about what they're after. There's also going to be some tax advantages to that later on in life, but think about how that works. Here's Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande in their recent tour. stuck with you raised over $3.5 million, and it all went directly to charity, all of it. So they didn't even keep any penny of that. They paid their bills, but the rest of it all went strictly to charity. I'm pretty sure if you went back and just typed up any of the other musicians you listen to or any of the other professional sports athletes that you watch on TV, many of them are also doing the exact same thing, just giving a lot of their time and energy to charities or have created some type of a foundation. All right, let's talk about budgeting. That money first comes in. We're going to create that budget. We're going to keep it really simple. You know, the more difficult we make this, the less likely we are to actually go back and do any of it. A budget is just a simple tool that allows you to create a plan for your money. If you ask your parents, they'll probably tell you they have a budget. They might not ever talk to you about it, but they have a budget. In other words, how much money do we bring in from our paychecks? How much goes just to pay the rent or the mortgage on where you're living? You know, we have a budget. We have to live within those means. A budget enables you to stay on track so that you don't spend more than what you bring in. And there's going to be some times that you probably will spend a little bit more than you bring in. It's just, I want to make sure that on average, I'm always spending less money than what's coming in. So I have a little bit of a safety cushion. And again, remember we said this is just like life lessons for everything you do. If you ever hop in an airplane and you travel from point A to point B, although it might take X amount of gallons for the pilot to travel from point A to point B, what do? They always have a reserve extra, so they never use as much gas as what they have in the plane, just in case they have to take a different route or have to circle for a while before they can go back and land. So that's the budget. What do we need? And then we're always going to make sure we live within those means and have extra just in case. That little extra helps you to achieve the goals that you're working towards so that you can actually have what you want when you really need to have those. Benefits of a budget: having a plan for the money ensures you'll have enough money. You have debt. A budget will help you pay down your debt. Maybe you got crazy and spent a whole bunch of money on your very first credit card. Well, how do I pay that debt down so I don't have to continue to pay 25% extra compounding over and over and over, so I can just get rid of that debt so I can take a breath and I can say, oh, now I finally have some extra money. Now I can maybe decide to save a little bit of that so I can go on a vacation or I can do something else. But let's get rid of that debt, get rid of that burden that's always hanging over us. A budget can help you stay out of debt and build some wealth, and which is the real goal, is to build that wealth. Without that budget, we have to kind of be aware of where's that money really going. Beware of the little expenses. And it's a great one here from Benjamin Franklin. A small leak will sink a great ship. And maybe an example of this would be, think about if you're paying or your parents are paying for cable TV and they've got a cable bill of $100 a month for cable TV. And then you've also got Netflix, and you've got Amazon Prime, and you've got Hulu, and you've got the Disney Channel, and you've got the ESPN Sports Channel, whatever it might be. You might be paying $300 a month for all of your TV, only to find out that maybe your cell phone provider actually gives you Netflix for free or the ESPN channel for free. So it's these little extra things that we're not paying attention to that start to kind of add up over time. And it might say, okay, that's only an extra $50 this month that I paid extra. That's $600 a year. What's that going to be over your lifetime? Just in 10 years, you're looking at $6,000. 20 years, you're at $12,000. After 40 years, that's an extra almost $25,000 you spent on TV just because you weren't paying attention to it. Could you use that extra 25 grand? And that's just one small item. We're not talking about everything else that we have through here. So it's these little things that really start to add up over time that if we don't take care of them, that we'll start to pay out too much money. And that's what sinks that great ship. It's just those little tiny, it's called death by 1,000 cuts, if you've ever heard that term before. All right. So how do we get started on making sure we create this budget? One, to plan our budget at the beginning of the month, you start at the beginning. You start with January 1st, February 1st, March, April 1st, at the beginning of the month. And then you start to write out how much money came in, but then where am I going to budget? Where did all my money go out to? Where did I spend each one of those dollars at? And write down, try to be as specific as possible. Today after school, I went and I got a soda for $1.75 at McDonald's. Or it's $1, whatever it might be. I'm just making these up as we kind of go along through here. But be very specific. Where did every single penny go to that you brought in? And you want to have that for a month, just so you know how much you're really spending. Because some people say, "Oh, my cell phone bill was this, and then my car insurance was this, and my gas was this." That's where it went. And you look at those, and that might have only come to $100 for the month, but you spent $400. Well, where did it go? Well, $5 here, $2 here, $3 here. We have to kind of know where that money's going to, so we can say if we're spending too much money, and do I have the ability to make sure I have extra that I can pay myself and give out to. So be specific and purposeful. Make sure you spend within your means, only spend less money than you have coming in, and be sure to budget some fun money. In other words, don't try to say that I can't actually spend anything on wants, because you need some of those wants. A lot of people talk about trying to lose weight, and they forget about the fact that you have to have a cheat day every once in a while, because if all you ever do is drink water and eat bread and crackers and maybe some vegetables, every time you walk past some cake or some cookies or some donuts, you're thinking, "Oh, that looks good." And so then you go for it and you end up eating the whole cake because you didn't have any fun time. You didn't have a cheat day where you could have a little piece of a cake or a muffin or one donut or maybe a couple cookies once a week type of a thing. So make sure you spend some fun money so that you don't try to save every penny, because then when you finally go crazy with it, you're going to go out there and spend every dollar you have, because you're just kind of like a dam that finally got unleashed. So bam, it broke that dam, and then you go out and spend every dollar you have because it was all held back for so long. So make sure you just give yourself a little bit of fun money every month to make sure you've got something to go back and spend or to have some fun with. 2, seize the moment. At this stage, typically most of your basic needs are going to be covered by your parents, which really makes it easy for us, because it gives us the ability to save a little bit more, because we don't have to pay for food. We don't have to pay for maybe your clothes or for your car or your car insurance or your cell phone bill. Maybe your parents are paying for that, and maybe even giving you a little bit of an allowance through there. So your expenses are now at the lowest they're ever going to be, which at the same time makes it, or gives us the ability to save maybe a little bit more money once you finally get that job, because you still don't have to pay all those needs. So this is where it comes in and seize the moment. Take this opportunity to establish a really strong savings or investing habit that'll empower you as you move into adulthood, so that by the time you get into adulthood, you've already got a good jump on where everybody else is at. Here's a good budget example, and this is just a real basic one. This is maybe for somebody who works 15 hours a week and has a job at $10 an hour. And this is just a generic. If you work less or don't work or work more or have different hourly pay, just to kind of see how a basic budget might work. So let's say that your income is $600 and you want your expenses to equal $600. So your income meets the expenses. So the first part is, remember, pay yourself first. That's the first part. So I want to put away, and because you're a little bit younger, remember we said pay yourself 10 to 20%. So I've got 25% listed down here for the simple reason that you don't have a lot of extra money you have to pay out just yet, because you don't have to pay your rent because your parents are paying it for you. Savings, 25%. So you put $150 into a savings or an investment account. Maybe then you have goal savings, which is maybe longer term savings out there that you say, you know what, this is for the future because I want to do something else, because I don't have at this point to pay my rent. And so I can put a little bit more money here than I might not be able to later on. Now, if, for instance, you have to actually pay your rent because maybe you just moved out, you're 18 or 19 or 20 years old, you're living on your own right now, this extra little bit right here is probably going to go away and not be part of that at this point. Cell phone, $35, 6%. Gas for your vehicle. Maybe you only have to go to and from school and to work, and both those are really close, 5%. Car insurance, $100 a month. Eating out, you spent $50. And these might be backwards. You might eat out for $100 and car insurance might be $50. But the goal is just so you can kind of see how a basic budget would play out for us. Shopping, and then some fun money. Just money that's I just want to go out, just have a good time and go out and do whatever with my friends. Some fun money. So $600 came in, $600 for my expenses, and it's kind of how it is broken down here. And always remember that you want to pay, this very first line should always be the line which is pay yourself first, and fund money is down towards the bottom, and then make everything else fit within this, with what we got through here. And this is a basic budget. And if you find yourself saying that, hey, I'm eating out, and that's coming up to a major portion, maybe now you see through my budget that because you don't have any extra money at the end of the month to put into your, making sure you have your 150, maybe you have to cut back on this one or cut back on this one with a cheaper cell phone plan or whatever it might be type of stuff to make sure that your budget fits. Now, if your expenses are coming out to more than $600, Some people say, well, I'll just go ahead and stop paying on the savings account. I'll stop paying myself first. And that becomes a big issue, because what we're trying to do now is we're trying to say, I don't want to live within my means. I want to spend every dollar I have coming in because I want to have fun right now. So we're actually going backwards. Remember, the very first rule of this, how to manage my money, is I got to pay myself first. That's rule number one. And so we want to make sure that money's going to be there for future uses, because if we just live paycheck to paycheck, when will that change? You don't want to get into that habit of going paycheck to paycheck. All right, let's talk about your first paycheck. Maybe you haven't gotten a paycheck yet, but you're going to be a little surprised when you first get it. And if you have gotten your first paycheck, you might have been a little bit surprised when you got it. I remember my son talking about his first paycheck and said, well, is this right? I worked this many hours, but here's what I got paid. And so most of us don't understand the fact that once you get paid, you don't get to keep that money. In order for the federal government to pay for all of the bills, to pay for the president, to pay for Senate, to pay for Congress, to pay for all the judges, for your city, to pay for your police officers, to pay for the welfare, to pay for unemployment, pay for all those bills, that money's got to come from someplace. And so it's usually called taxes. So number one, once you get paid, first thing that's going to come out, federal taxes. Government's going to take a portion of your money to pay the taxes. Then you're going to have Social Security and Medicare taxes to pay for people who are a little bit older. Now, you think, well, why do I want to pay for them? This is my money. Well, because they were doing the same thing when they were your age, paying for elders. Unemployment insurance tax, state and local income taxes, benefits, other deductions, wage garnishments, and hopefully you never get into number 6 here. This would be if you spent too much money and you can't pay your bills, and so the government starts taking some of your money to force you to pay some of your back bills. But these are all money comes out of each one of your paychecks, and so you don't always get what you think you're going to get in there. You've got what's called gross income and net. Gross is how much you think you're supposed to make. Net is what you actually received. So on your gross income, this is the total amount of income you make. As an example, if you got $10 an hour, worked 15 hours a week, your gross income is you're going to get paid $150. That sounds pretty good, but you don't actually get the $150. You get something that's a little bit less. The amount of your actual paycheck is what's called net income. That's a section right over here at the far right-hand side. So you might have grossed $150, but you only get to take home, and you hear that term take-home pay, $110. It's your $150 minus $40, and your net income is about $110. Now, this $40 is just a generic number I made up. It could be $25, it could be $55 based on where you live. Some states have different taxes than other states. Your net income is the income that's available to you. So even though you worked 10 hours, you worked 15 hours at $10 an hour for $150, your take home, 110, is called your net income. This is what your expenses have to fit into, is that net income portion. It's the money you actually get to keep. The difference between gross and net income is generally due to taxes from your state, the federal government, and your local taxes, and your Social Security, money that the government takes out to help pay for you when you get older as well. Your monthly budget should be built within your net income. In other words, this is called living within your means. Your means now are the $110 paycheck. Now you have to live within those means. That's your net income. Some of the reasons now. And we say that, okay, now remember that 110 is what you bring in. Now we've got to pay ourselves, give, and spend. So we're going to pay ourselves first, and that number money can go into medium-term goals, long-term goals, and lifestyle goals. And so let's talk about each of these three. What am I doing with that 10 to 20% of each one of my paychecks that I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I pay myself with? You're going to go back and maybe save for some items that you couldn't purchase with funds from a single paycheck. Maybe you want a new phone. Your parents aren't buying it for you. Maybe you've moved out of the house. You want a nicer pair of headphones, or maybe you want an Xbox or Nintendo Switch or whatever it might be. These are some medium-term goals, things that you want to make sure that you can pay for that you can't pay from a single paycheck. So you're going to have to pay a little bit extra into that savings account, that pay yourself, and then you're going to use that money that goes into there to maybe pay for some of these. But you never want to drain that account, but just what am I going back and using it for? Longer-term goals. Savings for items that require funds earned over several months. Now remember, let's kind of go back a couple of slides here. Right about here. Remember this goal savings right here? So this first one here is our paying ourselves first here. Savings, that's for paying ourselves first. Then we have goal savings. This is that little bit extra you're paying into so I can have some of those extra items that I want that aren't normal. Maybe I want that new cell phone that's going to cost me $1,000. Well, obviously that's not coming from one paycheck. So that's where that money's going right through here to pay for those larger expensive items later on down the line. So medium-term goals. Maybe your new phone, headphones, Xbox. Longer-term goals. Now, these are more expensive items. They're going to take a while to go back and save for. And again, we don't want to go into too much debt to get these items. We want to try to avoid debt in most cases. You know, obviously, you're going to buy a house at some point in the future, or an apartment or a condo or something like that. That's going to be some debt because of a major expense. But if we can avoid it, we want to go into as little debt as possible. And the reason for that is if I have less debt, I have more money to spend when I need it. If you go into debt and all of a sudden you don't have any extra money because every money goes to your brand new car payment, but it's a used car and it breaks down and you find out you need a new engine and it's going to cost you $7,000 for a new engine. Where's that money going to come from if you're already in debt, don't have any extra savings out there? Now you've got a car you still have to pay on because it's not paid off, but you can't even use it because you don't have money to get it go back and fixed. So these are some of our longer term goals. Savings for items that require funds earned over several months. If you're not sure of your long-term goals, then perhaps investing money. In other words, if you don't know what you want, like I don't think I need a car just yet. I don't think I need to pay for college just yet. If you're not sure where that money needs to go to, maybe instead of just putting that money in a savings account, you instead put it into a brokerage account like we mentioned before, because you're going to get paid extra money in the brokerage account on interest than you would in a regular savings account. And if you still don't need it for a while, you can actually go back and invest that money, which will grow even faster because of the investment that it's in. Let me give you an example of how that might work for you. Okay, I'm pulling up a chart on a website here. This is our IncomeTrader.com website, and I'm going to pull up a 10-year chart. And the ticker symbol I have here is the ticker symbol SPY. This is probably new to you, but I just want to show you the time value of investing versus dropping that money into a savings account. So ticker symbol SPY. This is an ETF that tracks, it's the S&P 500 index. In other words, when people say, what did the stock market do today? They're really referring to the S&P 500 index. This is 500 of North America's biggest companies. This is your Dell, your IBM, your Microsoft, your Google, your Apple, your Amazon. This is the 500 biggest companies in North America. And I'm going to look down here at a 10-year chart, right down here, 10-year chart. And if I take a look at this, this is the last 10 years. So if we go back 10 years ago, the S&P 500, the ticker symbol here for we're tracking SPY, was trading right around, you can kind of see those numbers change through here, was trading right around $95 a share. See this, it says open, $95.87. So it's trading about $95. You could have bought this 10 years ago at $95. And this is what I'm talking about long term, where you can kind of put that money away. If you don't need it for a while, look how it's going to grow. And if we would have just put that money there and that money grew at 2-3% a year on interest, that's fantastic at 2% a year. You can, maybe your $95 would be worth 20% more than it is today. But it went all the way up over the last 10 years to where we are right through here at about $442. See the open price here, $442.87, went from 95 to 442. I mean, we take a look at that, 95 to 442. Let's see what those rates of returns are. So we went to 442 minus 95, and it went up $347 on a $95 investment. So if I rate my rate of return off of that, 347 profit on a $95 investment. So that's the money, extra money you made because you spent $95. It's now worth $442 because you just bought it and didn't do a single thing. You just bought it and just in your brokerage account, you just said, take my $95, buy the ticker symbol SPY. Doesn't cost you, there's no commissions, and you just didn't do anything with it for 10 years. You just let it sit there. Well, after 10 years, that same item is now worth $442. You made an extra $347 on your money, and you didn't do anything. You just bought one thing and walked away. Well, what if you added a little bit of money from each paycheck? What if you added $10 from each paycheck every week for the last 10 years? That same $442 investment now might be worth $25,000. I mean, think of all of a sudden now you can go back and say, I'm going to pay for my next car in cash, or I'm going to invest it now in something through here, or I'm going to go ahead and put some money down for a house, or think of all the money you can start to do with now just because that little teeny bit of extra money. And let's see what that rate of return now comes out to be. So we're going to take 347, which is our profit that we made, and we divided it by a $95 investment. And we're going to do this as a percentage, what our profit is now. We made 365% on our money over 10 years. 365. Now, if your bank pays you 2% a year, that's a really good rate of return. That's 2% a year. That means over 10 years, that 2% is, you made 20% on your money in 10 years, 20%. Here, you're making 365% on your money instead of 20%. Would you rather make 365% or 20%? So that money can go into a regular bank and it's there, or it can go into a brokerage account and it's there. It's your choice. And if it's in a brokerage account, you can still go back and close that trade. Just go online or call your broker. And these are things you'll learn a little bit later, and say, close that trade. No commissions, no extra fees, and all of a sudden you now get to transfer that $300 or that extra $347 back into your checking account to use whatever you want, and it's all done within a matter of minutes. Very, very quick, no commissions, no fees on it. So the point is what am I going to do with that money? If you're not sure what to do with your long-term goals, then perhaps taking that money and investing it, maybe buying the one symbol SPY, Sam Paul Yellow, and use that money as a better fit until it starts to grow. And then when you finally need it, it's there. But all I'm saying is go ahead and do something. Put that extra money away here. Plan with it. Budget it. If I don't need it today, those are longer term goals, but it's money that I can go back and use later on when I need it versus just trying to spend every paycheck. So now go back and you're going to have some lifestyle goals with that extra money. Maybe you're going to want a better retirement. Maybe you say, you know what, maybe I'm 25 years old now and I've been investing that money over the last 10 years, and I've got 25 grand. Well, with that 25 grand, maybe you could buy yourself a new boat. How would that be? For go out and buy yourself a boat, or take a nice vacation someplace. You're done with school, you're done with college, and you decide, I'm going to go on a vacation someplace I've always wanted to be before I start to settle down, before I start to have a family, before I get through all kinds of stuff. Maybe now's the time to go back and do some of the things that you want to do versus where you might not be able to do them a little bit later on in life. So that's that extra money. What do I do with that extra money? Why is that important to have? That's part of that paying yourself first. People say, why do I need to start saving now? And the simple part here is to build a lifelong habit of paying yourself first that can turn into wealth. You know, if I'm Tom Brady and I want to be a football star, you know what? I'd like to be in the NFL, and I'd like to make millions of dollars a year in just nothing but endorsements, not even playing, just in endorsements, just for being Tom Brady. Well, what did he have to do? He had to start practicing when he was younger. He had to start preparing for what he wanted to get to. He didn't wait and say, I'm just going to wait until I'm 23 years old and I'm out of college and they're just going to draft me before he started playing football. No, he had to practice before he got into college. In order to get into college to get the scholarship, in order to get drafted, he had to start playing football at a much younger age. So why do you start saving now? To prepare for what you want to go. Remember, this is how you do anything, is how we do everything. I'm trying to get to that financially set item out there. And what you're going to find out is that when you're older in life and you're financially free, you're going to find out that most people aren't, and they're all going to ask how you did it. And I know that's down the line, it's many years away, but I've got to start to prepare for that. Save for major purchases and to protect myself in case there's an emergency. What happens if I need to fix something or if there's a repair? At some point, I'm guessing you're going to want to move out of your parents' house and you're going to say, adios, parents, I'm out of here. In a polite way, obviously. But we all want that independence. We all want that freedom. So when I finally get there, will I have the money to do what's necessary when I need that money? Or am I going to go back to say to my parents, yep, I moved out of the house because I want my financial independence, but I still need you to pay for everything. Are you really independent? And at what point, what if they cut you off and say, no more, you've taken too much money? Then what do you do? Because we didn't plan for that out there, right? We want to be able to make sure we have that money to go back and do what we want to do so that we truly are financially independent. If we're always waiting for somebody else to pay our bills, that person will be able to tell you what you have to do in order to receive that money. And you're not really independent at that point. So establishing an emergency fund. Money is set aside to cover financial surprises. That's part of our pay yourself first. Always have that money put away. Pay yourself first. That money's there for whenever I need it. Medical, dental, emergency. You lose your job. You finally got out of school, but you lost your job. How do you pay your bills? Or you're going to have to move back in with your parents. So one thing none of us want when we move out of our house is at some point to say, you know what? I got to move back in with my parents because I failed. I wasn't successful. An emergency fund could be as simple as $500 to $1,000. Just that extra little money that you're paying yourself, not every month, $1,000 every month, but so you have an extra $1,000 in case you need it. So we want to have that little bit of that emergency fund. And again, we're just trying to be prepared. Here's a nice quote that came out right from ABC News, and it says, and this is really scary when we think about this, almost 40% of all American adults would not be able to cover a $400 emergency with cash. They'd have to use a credit card or borrow from someone else. They wouldn't be able to do it with cash, savings, or a credit card charge that they could pay off in the next billing cycle. Wow. In other words, they could use the credit card, but they'd have to pay the $400 and they would do it over the next 10 months or a year before that was paid off. That's kind of scary. And it's because they didn't start to plan and budget like you're learning to do right now at a much younger age. And so they got into a bad situation. One of the things I like through here, and there's a couple things we can actually do to make this easy on us to supercharge some of our savings, and that's to use direct deposit. If you have a job, use direct deposit to have your bank automatically move a portion of your paycheck into savings account each time you get paid. In other words, if you get paid that $100 a week or $100 a month, whatever that might be, you can actually have, when that money goes and you deposit that money into your bank, they can automatically, without you doing anything, you just set it up with them once and you can do it online, that every time you make a deposit, they'll take a percentage of that money and put it into a savings account for you. So, and the reason for that is because what's in the savings account, we don't think of it as money that's there for me to spend today. So it automatically gets moved into a separate account so we don't even miss it. And after a few months of doing that, you won't even miss the fact that, oh yeah, I was getting paid $100 a month, but I'm really only getting $90 now because $10, that 10% went automatically into a savings account. And after a few months, you'll stop forgetting the fact that you were receiving $100 and you'll start only thinking, I only have $90. So you won't even miss that after a while. Makes it really nice. It's a way to kind of supercharge that so you don't have to worry about, did I forget to pay myself? If you find out that maybe you're still not living within your means, maybe to kind of supercharge those savings, you can add an extra 1 hour a week of work. And that extra 1 hour a week at $10 would be enough to kind of then put back into your savings account. So that's a nice way to do that. Just say, can I get 1 extra hour a week, or just spend that time? Or start to cut back on spending in other areas of your budget. And this is a little bit of a harder one for most people to go back and do, is to cut back some of that money here on their budget, because nobody wants to cut back on that money because we like to have fun. So sometimes it's better if you can just have that money automatically moved, or maybe add 1 or 2 extra hours a week to your paycheck. And then start learning about investing. That's a big one. You know, we are an investing educational company here at IncomeTrader. So the more you can learn about this, the better. And I would imagine that if you've got these videos, your parents probably went to one of our educational classes. Ask them to teach you some real basic stuff. Not too much, but some real basic stuff. I mean, if you like to buy makeup, maybe you buy the stock Ulta Beauty Supplies. If you like to wear Nike shoes, maybe you buy 1 share of Nike shoes. That's just it. If you like to eat at Chipotle's, you buy maybe $10 worth of Chipotle stock. You don't even have to buy a whole share these days. They have what's called fractional shares, which just means that, hey, if a stock's trading at $100 and I can't afford the $100 stock, you'd say, I just want to buy $10 of the $100 stock. It's called a fractional share. So you have 1/10 of that one stock. And if that stock still goes up 10% next year, your fractional share, it also went up 10% next year because you still own 1/10 of that same stock. So you still get 1/10 of its gains from the year as well. So you still benefit from everything, but maybe learn a little about investing at a very early age. And I think you're going to find that you'll start to like it. And you'll be able to walk in some stores when you walk around and say, hey, I own part of this store, don't I? And the answer is going to be, you do. All right, let's talk about a few parts here, something called the time value of money. We're kind of getting close to the end here, but let's talk about the time value of money and how it benefits to start saving early on in life. And again, don't invest so much or don't put so much into a savings account that it just becomes way too taxing and you can't do it because you'll stop. You have to do just enough that you still have enough money to meet the rest of your needs. So we're going to start saving and investing early, and allows your money to grow more quickly with the power of something called compound interest. And so here's what this means for us. Compound interest is when the interest added to the principal amount you invested. So in other words, if you invest $100 and you put it into an investment that grows 8% a year, that means that what you put in that was $100 this year, next year it's worth $108. It grew 8%. But that same $100 isn't $100 anymore. Now it's $108. And if it grows 8% this year, now you're growing $108 8%. And then next year you might be growing $117 8%. And the next year, because that money grows every year from the interest, the amount that you get, you're not getting 8% a year on $100 anymore. Now you get 8% on 110. The next year 120. Next year 150. Next year 170. And I'm just making those numbers up as we go. But the point is that money continues to grow at a faster rate because you get to keep the interest added to the principal. So the interest rate now applies to the new larger principal. And I'll show you a chart so you can see how this works. That's our next slide. This helps your account grow exponentially over time. Fantastic idea. Big brain right over here. You do this, you got a big brain. You might as well get A's in every class you ever take for the rest of your life because you've got the power of money working in your favor. And a lot of people say, and I like to use this quote all the time, I don't have to be the smartest person in the world. I don't. Because if I'm rich, I can hire as many smart people as I need to accomplish that goal. So what I really need to learn is how money works. Because money makes everything work. And I'm not saying money is perfect because it isn't, but if you have money, you can hire smart people to accomplish some of the goals that you're after. You need to learn how money works. Everything works off of money. The clothes you're wearing right now came from some type of a shop that created that. Who paid that, or that shop get the money to pay for that materials? Correct? It all comes from money, Wall Street. It all comes from some place, the big banks. Where does everything come from? The car you drive, where did that come from? The house you live in, the cell phone you have, money. Everything works around money. So if I can see how money works and learn principles of money, I've got a huge head start over the rest of the world. And so that's what we're after. So here's how compound interest works. How do I grow 20 to $250,000? So I'm going to take $20 a week out of a paycheck, invest $20 a week into an account that earns about 8% a year. And I'll show you how we can do that as well. And again, just by buying that ticker symbol we looked at a little while ago, which I believe was SPY. So take your $20, put it into a brokerage account that earns an average of 8% a year. $20 a week yields about $1,040 in money. That's how much money you took out of each paycheck because you paid yourself first, and you put it into some type of an investment account. You can put it in a savings account as well. You just won't make as much money, but we'll put it into a brokerage account, and we can just look at buying the S&P 500 index, the ticker symbol SPY. And you can just add that money, and as you add that money into it, you can say automatically transfer that money into my brokerage account from each direct deposit. You can have this done automatically so it never even touches you. You don't have to do it. It's just 100% automatic out of each paycheck. And again, as I said, after a while, you won't miss it. You only invest from the ages of 16 to 20. So you invest that $20 of it out of each week's paycheck, comes up to about $1,000 a year. At age 21, you completely stop investing. You just stop. Now, I'm not going to do anything else at that point of time. Now, your total investment of $5,200 over the last few years now grows to $227,000 by investing in something like SPY that we talked about. So you're 16 years old. You have no money in your brokerage account. You take $20 from each paycheck, which comes out to about $1,000 at the end of the year. But remember, that's growing at 8% a year now on average. Now, we just showed you that the S&P 500 from the last 10 years was up 365%. That's 36% a year. 36. And I'm only talking about 8% a year. That's all I'm talking about here. So I'm going really conservative just in case we have any really big market movements over time. But at 8% a year, that means your money that you put in here will actually give you an extra $83. That's just money that you make because you invested instead of just spending that money. You can get an extra $83 your very first year. You had $1,000 you invested. At the end of the year, you're going to have $1,123. That's going to be your 8% return on that money. So in other words, that's the time value of money. Your $1,040 is now $1,100. Now remember, you're still making 8%, but the 8% you're making is no longer on $1,040. The 8% you're now making is on $1,100. So here's your interest, here's your interest, here's your interest, this is how much money you're making every single year. So this year you're going to make an extra $569. Now you can see where you added your $20 a week every year for 5 years. But after 5 years, you just stop. You don't add any more money. You can just say, you know what? I'm done. I'm tired of investing. It was way too much work for 5 years, taking automatic deduction out of each paycheck and putting it away. I just can't do it anymore because I want to spend every penny I have. And of course, I'm being a little bit facetious here, but this year, you're going to make an extra $500 for doing absolutely nothing. You didn't even add any more money to your account, but you're making an extra $500 on your money. So you add that $500. Next year, your portfolio is now worth this amount. Here's how much you make off that. And every year you can see how much money you're making. And as you get down closer to retirement age down here, you're making $18,000 a year for doing absolutely nothing. If you quit your job and didn't do anything at all ever again, you're still making $18,000 a year because of what you did here, $20 a week from the age of 16 to the age of 21 years old. And then you stopped. That's it. You just stopped. You just didn't do it anymore. But you're still making $18,000 a year off of that money. That's phenomenal. That's called the time value of money, how compound interest grows. Because this money, this $13,000 here, is added to your principal amount. And so now you have this much to work with, $180,000. And when you have $180,000, you're making $14,000 a year off of just the interest alone. Not doing anything else. You're not even adding any more money. Imagine what would happen if somewhere in through here you threw a few extra dollars somewhere in through here, how much this would be. Maybe when you're 25, you said, hey, I got a bonus at work, and they gave me an extra $5,000 bonus. I think I'm just going to add $1,000 of that bonus into my brokerage account. Imagine how much faster you're going to get to those goals. Where might this money be when you finally retire? And you hear people say, I don't have enough money to retire because they didn't do any of this when they were younger. They just didn't do it. They said, I'll just do it later. They procrastinated. I'll do it later. All right, so there's 3 stages of financial wellness. We talked about creating that budget. Where's that money going? Living within our means. We talked about receiving that first paycheck. So ultimately, here's our goal. 3 stages of financial wellness. I want financial security, independence, and freedom. You will search for security first. I want to be independent, and then I want to have complete freedom as we go through this. Good, better, best. So let's talk about each of these. My financial security. This is when your money you have coming in, your paychecks, are sufficient to cover all of your expenses without the need to incur additional debt. In other words, you want a car, you can pay for it. You need a new refrigerator, you can pay for it. You want to go on vacation, you can pay for it. This is called financial security. You don't have to use your credit card. You don't have to go into debt. You don't have to go to mom and dad and borrow any money. This is called financial security. Very rarely will you be here at 15 years old, 20 years old, 25 years old. But it is your goal. You want to get to the point where you can pay your bills. And one of the reasons for that, if you have to rely on somebody else, remember, they will always tell you what you can and cannot do. I don't want to ever have somebody tell me what I can or cannot do because I need their money, right? I want to be able to be in charge of my own future. You can live comfortably this way. That's a pretty good lifestyle. And that's the area where probably 80% of most Americans are trying to just achieve. It's just right here. Then you've got about 10% or 15% that are trying to be financially independent, past that next level. So when your income is sufficient to cover all of your living expenses, you live comfortably, and you have savings and retirement are on track. In other words, to get to complete financial wellness, where you don't have to worry about anything ever again, complete financial freedom. That's where I'm trying to go here. But now I've got all my bills are paid, plus I'm saving money in my accounts, and I've got more money than I actually need at this point, and that money is now growing because I set up some type of retirement account, and that money's growing. And you've got about that next 15% that are trying to go here. So you got up to about 95% of people would like to get here. Only about 15% get here. The first 80% are really just trying to be financially secure so they can pay their bills. And then you've got about 15% of the entire population are trying to get to this financial independence where they paid all their bills and they have future money for the future because they have some savings. But then we've got maybe only 3% of the entire population is here. It's called financial freedom. And this is when you see someone driving around and they've got a nice car, they live in a big house, you ask them what they do, they don't even look like they ever work. It's because they don't have to work. It's because they've achieved the American dream. They've got to where they want to go. They have zero debt. Everything is paid for. They don't even have to work a day in their life, and all of their expenses are covered. And how they paying all of those expenses, even though they're not paying it, because their accumulated wealth is sufficient to sustain your lifestyle. So in other words, what they've got is they've got an account like this, but instead of making $700 a year, they're making $70,000 a year extra after their bills are already paid because they have no debt. So they're making an extra $70,000, or they're making an additional $500,000 a year because they have a lot of money, and that interest, that growth is just making it. Or maybe they've got a lot of rental properties that are completely paid for, and so they have no debt, and they're just living off of the income from those rental properties as those rental properties still appreciate in value. So maybe they bought a house at $100,000. It might now be worth $500,000 years and years later. So their investment's appreciating, but they still have all that rent that's coming to pay for all their bills. I mean, this is where we really at some point all want to achieve that American dream, is to have money either invested in an investment account or maybe through some real estate. And between the two of those, it's where most millionaires come from in America today, is through either real estate or the financial markets. And then we've got the new group that are coming across through here right now that are using a lot of the social media to kind of get to where they're at. But that's that new money. All right. Financial freedom. And that's where we want to go to. So when you're financially independent, you have options. And this is Chris Hogan, a really popular football player. When you're financially independent, you have options. You don't have to wonder if your bank account can handle replacing your hot water heater if it goes out, or buying groceries for a single mom who just quit or lost her job. In other words, when you're financially independent, you don't have to worry about what happens if I get fired, what happens if this happens over here. I've got the money to pay my bills, and I'm still going to go on living a really good lifestyle. And that's really where we're after, is that financial independence to get through there. So how do we achieve those? Traditional savings account, a money market account, mutual funds, or exchange traded funds, ETFs. And these are the new ones. And again, that's where that big brain items come over here, because we want to learn all about these ETFs. So most of us have been taught, open up a savings account. You're going to hear that a lot from people who really don't know how to become financially independent. They're going to say, put your money in a savings account, because that money, you're going to save it for a rainy day. And you'll probably get, maybe if you're lucky, 1/2 of 1% a year interest on that money. Yes, you're saving that money, but if the cost of all of your goods and services, if your cell phone bill goes up 3% a year, and your money you're making saving, you're only making 1/2 of 1% a year, you're actually moving backwards. You need to do something that keeps up with your expenses. Money market accounts, mutual funds, and your parents might be into mutual funds, or what you're going to take a look more at is something called ETFs. That's that ticker symbol SPY that I told you earlier. And it's like a mutual fund. It just doesn't have all the extra fees that mutual funds charge your parents. Traditional banks, money market accounts, these are things that a lot of people use. They're both okay to use, but they're always not the best investment. If you're brand new and don't know what you're doing, either one of these, having these, will be better than using nothing at all. If you're saying, I'm young and can't open up a brokerage account yet, you can. It's called a custodial account or a minor's account. And that just means that your parents will open it up for you, and they'll be on the account until you're 18 years old, but it's still your account in your name with your social security number. So these are the two common ones. People start when they're young because they don't know anything else at that point of time. But at some point, you're probably going to want to move into this item right over here, exchange traded funds, ETFs. A fund, think of it just like and here's a good way to think of an exchange traded fund. Think of it like, instead of investing in a single house that you buy as a rental property, you buy an entire apartment complex. You have a whole bunch of them, and you collect rent on 50 different units versus collecting rent on one individual house. And this way, if somebody moves out of that one house and you don't have rent for a month or two, if somebody moves out of one of the apartments, you still have 49 other apartments that are still paying rent. It's an exchange traded fund. It's just a big basket that holds a whole bunch of stocks. And it just sits there, and you own all those stocks in that basket. But because it's not actively managed, it has much lower fees than a mutual fund. So if all you get at this point right now is, I should be looking at ETFs, then we've got to where we want to go at this portion. Retirement savings account, a lot of people just get a little bit older, and at some point you're going to move out of your house, you're going to get a job, and your company might say that, hey, we've got a 401k you can set up, and you're going to want to do some research on how those work. But the government has actually created some tools to help individuals start to prepare for retirement later on in life. And these funds can then help supplement some of your Social Security funds once you get older to make sure you pay some of your bills. And you might hear things like a 401k retirement account. And this is just an investment account that your company sets up for you. They will typically take money and add it into your account for you, and you take some of your own money from each paycheck and add it to that account. And this money has not yet been taxed, so in other words, instead of actually getting your paycheck, which is your gross, and from your net pay, money's left over, you put that money in an investment account, this money comes from your gross pay. So it hasn't been taxed yet. So it's more money's going into your account, and then your broker, your company you work for will match it. So let's say that you have a paycheck for $100 or $150. Maybe you'll take 3% of that $150 and put it into a 401k. Your company will also maybe put 3% in. So you actually have 6% of your pay now but only 3% you paid, 3% the company paid on their own end just to have a retirement account for you. These are kind of a nice thing to have. It's called a 401k retirement account because your company is going to give you a little bit of extra money from each one of your paychecks to invest for a longer term amount. They do have some limits, so you can only add a little bit of money from each paycheck, and these numbers change on a yearly basis, so I can put them up here what they might be, but by the time you get this, it might be changed. And you're really not supposed to take that money out of that account until you're ready for retirement. You can, but you'll pay a penalty for taking that out. Usually it's about 10%. A Roth retirement account, and if this is kind of new because you're 15 years old, you want to kind of fast forward through this, I get it. Go ahead and fast forward. You'll be okay with that. A Roth retirement account, these are funded with pre-tax dollars. Principal interest grow tax-free, and it usually has a contribution of about $6,000 a year, but that changes yearly. So this is money that you say, I would like to open up my own brokerage account now for a retirement account. So from your regular paycheck, your net pay, you take a little bit of money and you put it into this Roth retirement account. What's really nice about these is this money is now tax-free. You don't have to ever worry about paying taxes. And although that might not be a big deal right now, trust me, when you get to be 65 years old and the tax rate might be 50 or 60% on your money, I don't know where it's going to be, but normally you have to pay all these taxes. This money is now tax-free. Whatever you have in the account, you get to keep it. And there's nothing better than having money that you don't have to pay taxes on. It's a pretty cool thing to have. And you might not see that now, but trust me, when you're ready to be retired, you'll be thinking, man, I just get to keep every one of those dollars in there. And the answer is absolutely, you get to keep them all. Time value of money for retirement example. And so here's kind of where I want you to see how that would work. The same type of thing we looked at for just putting $20 in each paycheck. See how this works out if we start putting money into a retirement account at a very young age. It's that time value of money. So maybe you take $200 a month from your paycheck. Now you're out of school. You're, maybe now 25 years old, so you've got a bigger paycheck now. But let's say you take $200 from every paycheck, or about $2,400 a year, as we kind of go through here. I'm sorry, $200 a month. So 12 months. So maybe $50 a week on a weekly basis. So $200 a month, $24 a year. Look what that money comes to. Remember, we're getting about 8% a year. So I'm still working 8% a year, even though the S&P 500 was up 36% a year on average. If we kind of go back and take a look at some of those, that's that 365% growth through there. But look where that money's going to be. You start at 25, you stop at 35. That $200 a month becomes almost $1 million, and you're making $93,000 a year interest off your money. So by the time you're ready to retire at 65, 66, 67 years old, you still get a paycheck of $93,000 a year extra without even touching your principal. Your principal still stays the same. This is just your paycheck every year you get to keep, on top of whatever else you might get from your 401k or whatever else you might get from Social Security or for what you might have put into, or the value of your house or any other rental properties you might have bought or anything else you've done. This is just one extra paycheck here. Look at that, for doing absolutely nothing. Now you stopped. Conversely, if you decide, I want to spend money right now. I have a good life and I don't want to start saving because I'm going to wait till the very last minute. Well, what if you started the whole process here, started at age 36, where this person stopped at 35. You start at age 36, put that same $2,400 into here. Look where we're at over here at the age of 67. You only have $480,000. You actually added money for a much longer period of time. You went from age of 36 all the way to 67. So you did it for over 30 years. You added money, and you don't have as much money, versus here you only did it for 10 years. That's a huge difference. And the difference is simply on investor A, you added money for 11 years. Investor B, you added money for 35 years. But investor A started at age 25. Investor B started at age 36. That extra time value of money, all those extra years of interest payments have added to your original amount, and you've got $939,000 a year at retirement, making an extra $93,000 a year on interest, versus you invested for 35 years. Total investment $76,000. Look at the difference. Huge difference. And this is all about, why do I want to have good money management principles now at a much younger age than versus when I'm much older? Huge difference. So what have we learned so far? It's all about, life isn't about finding yourself. I need to go on a journey. I need to find myself. I need to sit and think about who I am as a person. It's really about creating yourself, because you're never going to find yourself if you keep looking. At some point, you have to say, I'm going to make myself the person that I want to be. And that's really that's a great quote here from George Bernard Shaw. Make the person you want to be. So what do we learn? Why do I want to manage my money? Where do you spend your money? So you want to have yourself that budget. What are your needs and expenses, wants versus needs, and creating that budget is that first section. And then we talked about understanding your first paycheck. Well, what's the difference between gross and net? And it's kind of scary the first time you see it, but remember, the government's always going to want their money. So you got to remember that. The importance of saving at a very, very young age so you can get to the 3 stages of financial wellness. And we want to have complete financial freedom. We don't have to listen to anybody else. We get to do what we want to do because we have our money paid for. And I don't have to worry about somebody telling me what I can and cannot do going forward. So if you'd like some more information, you can always go to our website, IncomeTrader.com, where we've got some charts, stock scanners, automated, a lot of really cool stuff on our website here. You can ask your parents about it. If you think you might like a little bit about investing, and don't go too detailed if you're young, just say, how do I open a brokerage account? It's called a custodial account, and start putting a little bit of money into a ticker symbol like SPY. Ask your parents to help you get started with that. And if you just take a little teeny bit out of each paycheck, you don't even to the point where you even know, even if it's only $5, whatever it might be, anything is better than nothing because you start with that time value of money and you get yourself into a really good money management principles going on. You want some more information? Give us a phone call. But at the very least, guys, go back and talk to your parents about opening up an investment account and taking a little bit of each paycheck automatically when it gets deposited into your checking account. Then it moves automatically into your brokerage account to start to go back and invest. So I hope you like that, and good luck with the other videos and your other training going forward.